Sometimes betrayal doesn't announce itself with fury. It arrives quietly, wrapped in routine, wearing the face you've loved for years. The text message glowed on Marissa's phone screen like a burning coal. 3 times she read it, each time hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. I miss you already. Last night was perfect. Same time next week? It wasn't meant for her. Kellen had left his phone unlocked on the kitchen island while he showered, getting ready for another late-night meeting with clients. After 13 years of marriage, Marissa had never once snooped. Trust had been their cornerstone, or so she thought. Outside, the Atlanta rain tapped against the windows of their suburban colonial, a sound that once made her feel grounded. Now it felt like judgment, each drop echoing her naivety. How long had she been living this lie? She wanted to scream, but her throat felt as if it were lined with glass. Her legs wobbled slightly as she reached for the edge of the counter to steady herself. The betrayal didn't just sting. It caved her in. Her lungs refused to fill fully, as if even the air in the house recoiled from what she had uncovered. Laughter floated down from upstairs. Jackson's, bright and innocent. Their 6-year-old's giggles, mid-battle with his superhero figurines, felt like a life preserver anchoring her as everything else broke loose. The kitchen, her kitchen, with its quartz counters and lavender planters by the window, suddenly felt alien, like a stage set for the woman she pretended to be. Marissa's hands shook as she gently set the phone back exactly where she found it. Her reflection in the darkened window caught her eye. Chestnut hair, pale face, hollow green eyes. Familiar yet distant. She had once seen strength in those eyes. Determination. Passion. But now, all she saw was fatigue etched into every line of her face, like time had pressed down harder on her than it should have. When had the spark faded from those eyes? When had the vibrant woman she once was vanished, leaving behind someone who only knew how to accommodate and sacrifice? The shower upstairs, shut off. In the thick silence, she could hear Kellen humming, same tune he always did when he was in a good mood. Why wouldn't he be? He had it all. A thriving business, a beautiful home, a loyal wife, a joyful son, and apparently someone else who made his nights perfect. "Mommy?" Jackson called out. "Can you help me?" Iron Man stuck under the bed again. Her instincts kicked in before her broken heart could object. "Coming, baby," she replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. She'd always been good at that, keeping the surface smooth, making sure everyone else was happy, protected, unaware. The stairs stretched before her like a mountain. Each step forward required will. Jackson's door was ajar. Superhero toys littered the floor like tiny guards of innocence. He looked up at her, Kellen's hazel eyes in miniature, and for the first time the resemblance felt like a blade. That smile, that trusting gaze, it ripped through her. How could she protect that innocence when the foundation of their world was rotting beneath them? She swallowed hard, feeling the edges of her motherhood tremble. "See? He's way back there." Jackson pointed under the bed, completely unaware that the world he knew was about to shift forever. Marissa knelt down, reaching under the bed. Her fingers found the toy just as Kellen's familiar footsteps echoed in the hallway. The scent of his designer cologne drifted with him, the one she'd placed lovingly in his Christmas stocking. How many times had that same scent clung to someone else? "Hey, champ," Kellen's voice boomed from the doorway. "Ready for dinner? I was thinking we could order from that pizza place you like." Jackson cheered. But Marissa stayed frozen, still on her knees, clutching the toy Iron Man like a lifeline. She didn't dare look up, afraid that if she met his eyes, everything she discovered would solidify into something she couldn't undo. "Riz, you okay down there?" Kellen's voice held a note of concern that once would have melted her heart. Now, it just echoed hollow. She finally rose, knees stiff, and faced the man she had once trusted with every piece of herself. His sandy hair was still damp from the shower. His hazel eyes sparkled with the same easy charm that once unraveled her. He looked just like he had that morning, but nothing was the same. "I'm fine," she lied, passing Jackson the plastic superhero. "Just fine." But she wasn't. And as she watched Kellen ruffle their son's hair, playing the role of the doting father while likely preparing to sneak out to yet another late client meeting, Marissa realized she hadn't been fine in a long time. The question was, what was she going to do about it? The next 3 days passed in a daze. On autopilot, Marissa packed Jackson's lunch, drove him to first grade with a practiced smile, and stood at the door each morning as Kellen left like nothing had changed. Except everything had. Sleep evaded her. She lay in bed each night, the inches between their bodies stretching wider with every breath he took. Each exhale felt like venom in the air. The messages she'd found had cracked everything open. Now it all clicked. The late nights, the weekend business trips, the cologne she didn't recognize, the unused gym membership. On the fourth morning, as she stirred a mug of untouched coffee, her phone buzzed. Her mother's voice crackled through the speaker. "Marissa, honey, are you there? You haven't answered any of my calls." "Mom." The word came out a whisper, then a sob. Once it started, she couldn't hold it back. The cup slipped from her hand, crashing to the floor. Brown liquid bled across the white tile like spilled secrets. "I'm coming over," Vivian declared, her tone brooking no argument. "Right now." Marissa wanted to protest, to keep the fragile illusion of control intact, but no words came. Instead, she lowered herself to the floor, avoiding the shattered porcelain, and pulled her knees to her chest. 40 minutes later, the front door clicked open. Vivian used the emergency key Marissa had insisted she'd never need. Wasn't this an emergency? The slow unraveling of everything Marissa had once believed in. "Oh, sweetheart." Vivian's footsteps halted at the kitchen threshold. In seconds, she was on the floor beside her daughter, arms wrapping tight around Marissa, just like she had during childhood stomach aches and college heartbreaks. But this pain went far deeper. She was on the floor beside Marissa, arms wrapped tightly around her daughter with the same comfort that once soothed scraped knees in college breakups. But this pain lived deeper than bone. "He's having an affair." The words cut from Marissa's throat like glass. "I saw the messages. I've seen them together, leaving his firm after hours. Her name is Avery. She's 29. Each fact, each number felt like a fresh laceration. Vivian's embrace only tightened. "Have you confronted him?" Marissa shook her head, her hair unwashed and limp, slipping across her cheek. "I can't, because of Jackson. I don't know how." The words scattered, like the broken shards of the coffee cup now cold on the floor. "When was the last time you ate?" Vivian's practical instincts took over. She scanned her daughter's hollow cheeks, the dark crescents under her eyes. "I'm not hungry." "That's not what I asked." Vivian stood, pulling Marissa gently up by the hands. "Your father and I didn't raise you to let anyone break you like this, not even Jackson's father." "But that's the problem," Marissa said, her voice fraying. "Jackson worships him. Just yesterday, Kellen taught him how to tie his sneakers. They sat on the steps for almost an hour, laughing, practicing. How do I take that from him?" Vivian's expression softened. "And how long can you keep protecting Jackson by destroying yourself?" The question settled in the air, heavy and unmoving. Vivian swept up the shattered cup, made a fresh pot of coffee, and nudged a plate of toast toward her daughter. Each bite tasted like dust, but Marissa forced it down under her mother's watchful gaze. "I used to be stronger than this," she whispered, staring at the ring on her finger. The diamond caught a sliver of morning sun, casting fractured rainbows against the cabinet. She used to think those prisms were magic. Now they just look like broken pieces of a dream. "You are still strong," Vivian insisted. "But strength isn't about gripping something that's killing you. Sometimes it's knowing when to let go." A message buzzed on Marissa's phone. "Kellen. Working late tonight. Don't wait up." The words coiled in her stomach like a sickness. How many times had she seen that same message? How many times had she kissed him goodbye, not knowing those lips carried someone else's scent? Vivian watched the pain ripple through her daughter's face. "Pack a bag," she said quietly but firmly. "You and Jackson are coming home with me for a while." I can't just..." "Yes, you can," Vivian said, voice softening but never uncertain. "You don't need to make a final decision. Not yet. But you do need space. You need to remember who you are without him." Marissa glanced around the kitchen. She had painted those walls herself, picked every drawer handle, built a life here with her own hands. But it all looked different now, stained by betrayal. Maybe Vivian was right. Maybe she needed distance to see clearly. "Okay," she whispered, and for the first time in days, she felt something beyond pain. Maybe it was fear. Maybe hope. But it was something. Vivian's house stood at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in Fairhaven, the familiar brick porch and bay windows, a stark contrast to the glassy, modern lines of the home Marissa was leaving behind. Marissa had left behind the bedroom of her childhood, still untouched by time. Soft yellow walls, a cushioned window seat that overlooked Vivian's garden, picture frames lined the dresser, charting her path from gap-toothed girl to ambitious college grad. That version of herself now felt like a stranger. Jackson had adjusted faster, as kids often do. He marveled at Grandpa Robert's legendary pancake stacks and spent hours in the backyard's still-standing treehouse. But when night fell and the house went quiet, his voice would sneak into the darkness. "When are we going home, Mommy?" Every time it pierced her heart like a fresh wound. It had been 5 days since they'd left. Kellen's texts and voicemails had shifted, first confused, then angry, now desperate. "Please, Riz, whatever this is, we can fix it. Just come home. Jackson needs his dad." She hadn't answered, not once. On the 6th morning, just as the sunrise painted the Atlanta sky in soft watercolor streaks, Marissa found herself wide awake before the rest of the house. She padded downstairs, surprised to find Robert already outside, tending to Vivian's treasured roses. "Couldn't sleep either?" His voice, always steady, carried gently across the dew-speckled lawn. He patted the open space beside him on the wooden bench. "Your mother used to say these roses saved her sanity when you were colicky," Robert said with a small smile. "There's something about the rhythm of caring for them, watching them thrive, even after a hard season." Marissa sat down slowly, curling her knees to her chest. "I keep thinking about all the signs I ignored, the gut feelings I buried. Was I really that blind, Dad? Or did I just not want to see?" Robert paused, pruning shears stilled in his hands. "Sometimes love doesn't make us blind, it just makes us hopeful. And hope can look a lot like denial if you're holding it too tightly." A cardinal landed on the garden fence, vibrant red feathers catching the dawn light. "I don't even know who I am anymore," Marissa whispered. Then it all came pouring out. The messages, the office parking lot, the doubt. "I thought I was a wife, a partner, someone who could hold things together no matter what. But now, it all feels fake." "You're still you," Robert said, voice firm. "You're still the little girl who climbed the tallest oak in the neighborhood with a busted ankle. Still the one who convinced the town to save that old bookshop when the developer came in. Still the woman who stayed up 3 nights straight organizing a benefit concert for a friend's medical bills. Kellen didn't give you that grit, and he damn sure can't take it away." Tears slipped down Marissa's cheeks. But this time, they felt different. These weren't from despair. They felt like release. The peace of the moment shattered as a silver BMW pulled up to the curb. Marissa's heart jumped into her throat when she saw Kellen step out, crisp in his designer suit, holding a bouquet of overpriced lilies. "I'll handle this," Robert said quietly, rising and walking toward the gate. His voice was calm, Kellen's, rushed and urgent. From the bench, Marissa could hear the words, pleading from one side, unwavering firmness from the other. "She needs time, Kellen." "Time for what?" "She won't return my calls, won't say what's going on. I have a right to see my son." "Yes," Robert said calmly. "You have rights, as Jackson's father, but you gave up your right to my daughter's peace of mind the moment you decided to share your life with someone else." The bouquet slipped from Kellen's fingers, landing soundlessly on the lawn. "She told you?" "She didn't have to. A father knows when his daughter is breaking. The real question is, will you respect her enough to give her the space she needs?" Something in Robert's voice must have pierced through the polished armor of Kellen's frustration. He looked over Robert's shoulder toward the bench, his eyes locked with Marissa's across the garden. For a second, she thought she saw something fracture behind his usual poise, fear maybe, or actual remorse. "Tell Jackson, I love him." That's all he said. Then Kellen turned and walked back to his car. Marissa let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. The cardinal startled at the sound of the engine, fluttering up from the fence and disappearing into the sky. "You know what else your mother used to say about roses?" Robert asked, settling back on the bench beside her. "Even after the harshest winters, they always find a way to bloom again." From upstairs, Jackson's voice floated out. "Mommy? Grandpa?" The day had begun. Marissa stood, smoothing the wrinkles from her pajama pants. For the first time in what felt like forever, she was hungry, truly hungry. "How about we make breakfast together?" she asked. "Like we used to." Robert smiled, seeing something return to his daughter's eyes. "Pancakes with blueberries?" She nodded. "And maybe, later, we could look into some therapy options." She hesitated, then said softly, "I think I need help finding my way." "Back?" Robert asked. "No," Marissa replied. "Not back, forward, to whatever comes next." Dr. Olivia Bennett's office looked out over Lake Lanier. Sunlight streamed through the wide windows, softening the sharp edges of everything it touched. Marissa sat at the edge of a deep navy chair, fingers working a tissue into fragments too small to hold on to. "When was the last time you made a decision just for you?" Dr. Bennett's voice was gentle, inviting but firm. She was younger than Marissa had expected, with warm brown eyes and streaks of silver in her natural curls. Streaks she wore with quiet pride. The question hovered in the stillness. Marissa opened her mouth, closed it. Her mind sifted through the last 10 years. Every decision she had made was tethered to someone else. Kellen's career plans, Jackson's routines, the house he wanted, the dinner parties he needed her to host. I can't remember," she whispered. The admission struck her like a blow to the chest. "Doctor," Bennett leaned forward. "Tell me about the morning you left. You said you packed a bag and went to your parents. What made that morning different from all the others?" "My mom came over," Marissa started, then paused. "No, that's not it." She drew a shaky breath. "I broke a coffee mug." The memory locked itself in place. I'd been holding everything together, pretending I was okay, and then the cup slipped. It shattered. And in that moment, I couldn't fake it anymore. It was like watching myself break apart, right there, on the kitchen floor. "Sometimes we need to break before we can rebuild," Dr. Bennett said gently. "You mentioned Jackson's been asking about going home. How do you handle those conversations?" Tears welled up in Marissa's eyes. "I tell him we're on a special trip, a sleepover at Grandma and Grandpa's house. But last night, he asked me if Daddy did something bad." She paused, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Because his friend Lucas's dad did something bad, and that's why Lucas lives with just his mom now." She wiped her eyes with what little was left of her tissue. "How do I protect him from all this, when I can't even protect myself?" "Children are incredibly intuitive," Dr. Bennett replied. "They often understand far more than we think. What scares you most about being honest with Jackson?" "That he'll hate me for breaking up our family, that he'll blame me for not being enough to keep his father faithful." The words spilled from her like a dam giving way, raw and terrified. "And do you blame yourself?" The question hit deep. Marissa turned her gaze toward the lake outside, watching the sailboats glide effortlessly across the surface. "I gave up everything I was to become what Kellen needed. I thought if I could just be good enough, loving enough, patient enough, perfect enough." Her voice trembled, a whisper, almost to herself. "Maybe if I had cooked better meals, looked a little younger, been a little more exciting, he wouldn't have needed someone else." The thought disgusted her, yet she couldn't shake it. It clung to her ribs like shame. She knew it wasn't fair, but that didn't stop it from feeling true. She paused. Her voice lowered. "But it wasn't about me being enough, was it?" "What do you think it was about?" Dr. Bennett asked softly. "It was about him," Marissa said, the realization bursting out with a sharpness that caught her off guard. "It was always about him not being satisfied, him always wanting more, younger, newer, shinier." A flicker of fury flashed in her voice. "I'm angry," she said, breath catching. "I'm so angry I can barely breathe." "Good," Dr. Bennett nodded. "Anger can be healthy. It's often the first step toward reclaiming your power. Tell me about the Marissa before Kellen. Who was she?" The question pulled her back in time. "I was fearless," she said quietly. "I wanted to open a crisis center for struggling families. I volunteered at the shelter on weekends. I had strong opinions and wasn't afraid to share them. I wore color, bright yellow and coral and pink, before I shrank into the beige and navy he liked. I laughed, loud, too loud probably." Her voice cracked. "When did I start making myself smaller?" Dr. Bennett leaned forward. "The question isn't when you started. The question is, are you ready to stop?" Their hour together was nearly over. Dr. Bennett handed her a slim, unmarked notebook. "This week," she said, I want you to make one small decision each day just for you. It doesn't need to be big. Maybe you try a different breakfast. Maybe you take a new road back to your parents' place. Write it down and note how it makes you feel. Marissa took the notebook. Its blank pages felt both terrifying and full of possibility. What if I make the wrong choices? There are no wrong choices when it comes to rediscovering yourself. Dr. Bennett smiled. Only chances to learn who you are now. As Marissa stood to leave, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window. For a fleeting moment, she saw a different version of herself. Stronger, unbound, freer. Not the woman shaped by someone else's expectations, but one finally reclaiming her own shape. The woman in the glass looked back at her with quiet resolve. Same time next week? Dr. Bennett asked. Marissa nodded. This, at least, was a choice she could make with confidence. Same time next week. And the small decisions began to stack. Marissa bypassed her usual Starbucks for an indie cafe with mismatched mugs and handwritten menus. She walked in the evenings through her parents' quiet neighborhood, while Vivian kept Jackson entertained with puzzles and chocolate milk. She bought a sweater in bright red, a color Kellen had once dismissed as too much for her tone. The first time she wore it, her reflection startled her. The woman in red looked unapologetic, alive, like someone rediscovering the thrill of being seen not for what she gave, but for who she was. For a moment, she touched the sleeve and let herself smile. Each decision found its place in Dr. Bennett's notebook, along with the emotions that followed. Nervous, hesitant, then hopeful, energized, free. On a crisp Tuesday morning, she dropped Jackson off at school and decided to try a local diner for breakfast. The place was bustling, full of clinking mugs, murmurs of early meetings, and the smell of sizzling bacon. Mind if I share your table? Every other spot's full. Marissa looked up. A man stood beside her booth, a half-full coffee cup in one hand. His dark hair was slightly unkempt, like he'd raked through it too often. His brown eyes carried a weariness she recognized. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans. A leather jacket hung casually over his arm. Her instinct was to say no. But then she heard Dr. Bennett in her head. Small steps, new moments. Sure, she said before she could stop herself. Thanks. I'm Adam, he said as he slid into the booth across from her, giving her space. Marissa. The waitress appeared. Marissa ordered French toast, a subtle defiance of Kellen's constant criticism about carbs and calories. Adam asked only for toast and black coffee. Not hungry? She asked before thinking. A shadow passed behind his eyes. Not really. These days, never am. My wife, he paused, running a thumb along the mug's rim. My late wife used to make huge breakfasts every Tuesday. It was our thing. The word late settled between them. Heavy, respectful. I'm sorry, Marissa said softly. 2 years now, he replied, though she hadn't asked. Cancer. Some days it feels like it just happened. Others, like it was someone else's life entirely. His eyes flicked to her bare left hand. You're going through something too, huh? Marissa tensed, protective of the ache still raw in her chest. Part of her wanted to retreat, to keep the story pressed tight against her ribs where it couldn't be misjudged or misunderstood. But his voice held no judgment, just understanding. A kind of grief-colored kindness that invited truth without pressure. But something in his voice, empathy, not pity, made her speak. Separation, she said finally. My husband and I. She couldn't finish. You don't have to explain, Adam said gently. Pain, different shapes, same weight. Their food arrived, offering a quiet pause. Marissa found herself studying him as he buttered his toast without looking. There was a steadiness to him. A kind of quiet that didn't feel empty, but anchoring. He didn't try to fill the silence with pleasantries. What brings you to this side of town? She asked eventually, surprised by her own interest. I teach engineering at the community college a few blocks over. You dropping your son off at school? Marissa nodded. Yeah, we're staying with my parents for a bit. She motioned vaguely in the direction of Fairhaven. Adam's expression softened with recognition. The in-between place, he said. I remember that. When Katie, my wife, passed, I couldn't stay in our house, but I couldn't leave it either. Ended up crashing in my brother's spare room for 3 months until I figured out how to breathe again. His honesty disarmed her. How did you know when it was time to go back? I didn't, he admitted. One day I just realized. I was stronger than I thought. It wasn't about being ready. It was about being brave. Brave enough to try. Marissa's phone buzzed. A message from Kellen. Jackson forgot his favorite T-Rex. I can drop it off at school if you want. Her hand hovered for a moment, then typed, I'll handle it. 3 words. But they felt like a declaration. Adam must have noticed the subtle shift in her expression. Everything okay? Yes, she said, and for the first time in a while, she actually meant it. Just learning to set boundaries. A slow, genuine smile broke across his face, softening the sadness in his eyes. Those are the hardest walls to build, but the ones worth maintaining. The morning rush was beginning to thin. Marissa knew she had to get back and grab Jackson's toy, but still, something held her in place. She hadn't expected to feel this ease, and it unsettled her, just enough to make her question herself. Was it too soon to sit this comfortably with someone new? Was she being unfair to Jackson, to herself, to the promises she'd made about healing before opening up again? And yet, this didn't feel like rushing. It felt like breathing, like remembering how. Do you come here often? She asked. Every Tuesday, he replied simply. Old habits. She reached for her wallet, but he held up a hand. Please, let me. Consider it a thank you for letting me share your table. That's not necessary. I know, he said softly, but sometimes it's okay to just accept kindness. No strings. Kindness. That word lodged somewhere in her chest. It had been so long since she'd received it without a ledger attached, without owing something back. As Marissa stood, preparing to leave, the words escaped her before she could second-guess them. Maybe I'll see you next Tuesday. Maybe you will, Adam said. There was no pressure in his tone, only quiet sincerity. Take care, Marissa. As she walked toward her car, she pulled out Dr. Bennett's notebook and wrote, had breakfast with a stranger. Felt warmth and guilt, like I was cheating on my grief, on my responsibility. Feeling scared, hopeful, real. The parent-teacher conference wasn't supposed to feel like a battlefield. Marissa arrived early at Jackson's school, her new navy blazer and high-waisted jeans lending a confidence she didn't fully believe yet. She inhaled the scent of dry erase markers and warm carpet, her footsteps echoing off the tiled floor. The walls were filled with colorful artwork, rainbows, animals, spaceships, each one a bold splash of innocence. Kellen was already there. He leaned against the wall near Mrs. Henderson's classroom, his tailored suit and polished shoes looking absurdly out of place in the casual elementary hallway. Their eyes met. For a split second, she thought she saw surprise flicker across his face. You look different, he said, standing straighter. I am different. The words came out steadier than she expected. Before he could reply, Mrs. Henderson opened her door. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, please come in. The next 20 minutes were a masterclass in controlled tension. They sat side by side in Mrs. Henderson's classroom, their words polite, their expressions brittle. Jackson's academic performance was solid, but the teacher raised gentle concerns about emotional strain. He's been drawing a lot of pictures of houses lately, she said. One is labeled for your parents' house, one for your husband's. He seems unsure where home is. A tight knot formed in Marissa's throat. Beneath the desk, her fingers brushed the edge of Dr. Bennett's notebook in her purse, touching it like a lifeline. The edges were worn now, smoothed by countless touches. Her thumb had memorized the curve of its spine, like a rosary for the uncertain. Well, he wouldn't be confused if his mother hadn't suddenly decided to abandon our family, Kellen said, his usual charm dipped in frost. Mrs. Henderson's eyes widened slightly. Perhaps we can focus on strategies to help Jackson adjust. I didn't abandon anyone, Marissa said calmly, her voice firm and quiet. I removed our son from a toxic environment. Toxic? Kellen let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Is that what your therapist is calling it now? 3 weeks away and suddenly you're a whole new person? His voice stabbed like a paper cut, small, precise, designed to sting without drawing blood. No, she replied evenly. I'm the same person I've always been. I'm just done pretending to be someone else. She turned to Mrs. Henderson. What can we do to help Jackson feel more secure? The teacher seemed relieved to shift focus back to her expertise. She recommended consistent routines, honest communication, and possibly involving the school counselor. Marissa took notes. Kellen sat beside her, stiff and silent. After the meeting, he followed her out to the parking lot. Avery and I broke up, he said abruptly, like he was offering a truce. Marissa's hand stilled on the car door. Do you expect me to congratulate you for ending something that never should have started? I made a mistake, a horrible mistake, but you can't just walk away from 10 years of marriage without even trying to fix it. Fix it? She turned to him, her voice rising. Like you tried to fix it with luxury gifts after your so-called meetings? Or by gaslighting me, telling me I was paranoid for questioning your second work phone? His expression darkened. You're being hysterical. This isn't you. The woman I married would never. Would never what? She snapped, eyes flashing. Ask questions? Demand honesty? Refuse to live like a background character in her own life? The woman you married doesn't exist anymore. She cut him off. She died the day I saw those messages. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't have to. Her clarity was louder than any scream. And you know what? I'm glad. Because that woman, she spent so much time trying to be perfect for you. She forgot how to be real for herself. Oh, so this is about you finding yourself now? His tone dripped with sarcasm. Or is it about that guy you've been having breakfast with? The accusation hit like a slap. Have you been following me? I drove by that diner 3 times this week. Same guy, same booth. So much for your moral high ground. His name is Adam, she said calmly. And he's someone who understands loss. Not that I owe you any explanations. You owe me everything, Kellen snapped. His composure crumbled. I gave you a perfect life, and you're throwing it away for some guy in flannel shirts who probably can't even afford. Stop, Marissa raised her hand, steady as steel. Just stop, Marissa said. You didn't give me a perfect life, Kellen. You gave me a perfect prison, and I'd rather be alone and real than trapped and admired. She slid into the driver's seat, hands trembling as she started the engine. Through the windshield she saw his silhouette, so familiar, standing stunned in the parking lot. As she pulled away, he grew smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror. At the next red light, she opened her messages. Adam's were near the top. Simple ones. Notes about the weather, a coffee shop recommendation, a picture of a leaf he thought looked like a heart. Nothing hidden, nothing expected. Just real. Then a new message lit up the screen. Kellen, this isn't over. We're a family. I'm going to fight for that. Marissa took a long, steady breath. She typed back, no, we're parents, and the only thing you should fight for now is being a better father to Jackson. Then she blocked his number. Another small rebellion. Another act of freedom. In Dr. Bennett's notebook she later wrote, stood my ground. Feeling, terrified, empowered, free. Rain tapped gently on the windows outside Dr. Bennett's office. Inside, Marissa sat straighter than she had just weeks ago. Her presence filled the room in a way it hadn't before. He said I owe him everything, she said, the words heavy with emotion. And for a second, I almost believed him again. That's what scares me, how easy it would be to fall back into that version of me. But you didn't, Dr. Bennett said softly. What was different this time? Marissa paused. I felt angry instead of guilty, and for the first time I saw his perfect life for what it really was. A cage, just with prettier bars. Her phone buzzed. A message from Adam. Tuesday. The breakfast crowd missed you. She hadn't gone that morning, unsure whether Kellen's accusations had tainted what had become a quiet, grounding routine. Dr. Bennett noticed the shift in her face. You mentioned someone new, a friend, she said. How does that feel different from your relationship with Kellen? Marissa thought for a long moment. With Kellen, I was always performing. The perfect wife, the patient mother, the gracious host. She tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. With Adam, I don't have to perform. We just exist. Sometimes we talk about nothing. Sometimes we talk about pain. He doesn't expect me to be anything other than who I am, right then. And who are you in those moments? The question lingered with her. Later, as she pulled into the school parking lot to pick up Jackson, the question still echoed in her mind. He ran to the car, holding up a drawing with proud, excited hands. Look, Mommy, I drew our family. The paper showed 3 houses, one for Grandma and Grandpa, one for Daddy, and one labeled Our New Home with a question mark. Her heart clenched. Oh, baby, she whispered, pulling him into her arms. You know home isn't just a place, right? It's wherever we're together, wherever we feel safe and loved. Like how you feel safe with Mr. C? Marissa froze. What do you mean, sweetheart? Jackson shrugged. I saw you with Mr. C at the diner. When Grandpa took me for pancakes last week, you were laughing. A pause. You don't laugh like that anymore, except with him. out of the mouths of babes. She hadn't even realized it. But she had laughed that day. Marissa sat in her parents' backyard. The rain had passed, leaving the garden glistening and new. She pulled out her phone and typed, "The Tuesday breakfast crowd hasn't lost its spot. Just needed a little time to think." Adam's reply came almost instantly. "Time and space are good things." "No pressure, Marissa." She smiled at the words. "No pressure. No expectations, no performance. Just being." Still, something tightened briefly in her chest. A flicker of fear, not of Adam but of herself, of getting it wrong again, of letting someone in too soon before she knew where the cracks still were. But maybe, she thought, letting someone see those cracks was part of healing, too. A voice behind her broke the moment. "Good news?" Marissa turned to find her father stepping down onto the patio. "Just a friend," she said, but the smile lingered. Robert sat beside her on the garden bench. "You know," he began, "when your mom and I first met, we were both pretty bruised from old relationships." He chuckled softly. "Everyone told us it was too soon, that it wouldn't last. But sometimes the right person comes at the wrong time, and you've got to decide whether to trust the timing or trust your heart." "Dad, it's not like that," Marissa said. "Adam and I, we're just two people who've both been through hard things." Robert nodded, his voice low. "Understanding each other's pain, that's rare. Don't let Kellen's insecurities take that away from you." That night, Marissa opened Dr. Bennett's notebook. Beneath the latest entries, she wrote, "Today I realized something. I'm not just healing from Kellen's betrayal. I'm healing from all the ways I betrayed myself. Every time I went quiet when I wanted to speak. Every time I made myself small to fit inside his expectations. I chipped away at the woman I was meant to be. And worse, every time I told myself that was love. That sacrifice meant devotion. That being invisible meant being valuable." She paused, then added, "And maybe it's okay to let someone see the real me, even if I'm still figuring out who that is." Her phone lit up with another message from Adam. "Katie used to say rain washed away what's dead and made space for new growth. Thought you might like that." Marissa stepped toward the window, watching the last raindrops slip from the edges of the leaves. "New growth," she typed back. "I like that." In the quiet glow of her old bedroom, surrounded by pieces of who she used to be and shadows of who she might become, Marissa felt a shift. It wasn't joy, not yet, but it was possibility. And for now, that was enough. The letter came on a Thursday morning. A thick envelope from a prestigious firm landed on the welcome mat. Marissa didn't even have to open it to recognize the name. Kellen's lawyer. The same office where Avery had once worked as a junior associate. Irony had its own twisted sense of timing. "He's filing for full custody," she said, voice low, hands trembling as she passed the papers to her mother. "He's claiming erratic behavior, an unstable living situation, says I'm an unfit parent." Vivian's jaw clenched as she scanned the letter. "Unstable? You're living with your family, going to therapy, giving Jackson love and stability. Meanwhile, he's the one." "Mom," Marissa interrupted, voice calm, steady even. "This is what Kellen does. When he's scared, he tries to control everything." The kitchen timer went off with a cheerful ding. Chocolate chip cookies, just like she'd promised Jackson after school. As Marissa pulled the tray from the oven, her phone buzzed. A message from Adam, his daily check-in. "Thinking of you. Stay strong." She'd told him about the custody threat over breakfast the week before. His response had been measured and kind. "He's using your greatest love as a weapon." That says everything about him, and nothing about you. The doorbell rang. Through the frosted glass, she saw Kellen's outline. Vivian moved instinctively toward the door, but Marissa touched her arm gently. "I need to do this." She stepped outside. Kellen stood on the porch. He looked tired, ruffled. Not like the polished version he tried so hard to present to the world. "You're not even going to fight for us?" he said before she could open her mouth. "Just throw it all away like it never mattered?" "Lower your voice," Marissa said quietly. "Jackson will be home any minute." "That's exactly my point," Kellen snapped. "He needs his family together. He needs stability." "No," she replied, voice even. "He needs truth. He needs to see what a healthy relationship looks like. What he doesn't need is to think that love means erasing yourself to keep someone else happy." Kellen's expression cracked. "I ended it with Avery. I'm in therapy. I'm trying, Marissa. Doesn't that count for something?" For a moment she almost saw the man she had once loved, open, vulnerable. But then Dr. Bennett's words came back to her. Growth born from fear of loss isn't real change. It's just another kind of control. You're not changing for you, Kellen, she said. You're changing to keep me in the perfect little box you built, but I don't fit in that box. Maybe I never did. His voice turned sharp, cold. So this is about him, your flannel-wearing diner buddy. Is he really worth throwing away 10 years of marriage? This isn't about Adam, she said calmly. This is about me, finally realizing I'm worth more than being someone's contingency plan. She held up the legal envelope. Go ahead with your custody play, but every dirty tactic you try, every lie you tell, Jackson will find out one day, and then you'll have to live with what that does to his trust in you. I'm not the one destroying things, Kellen said bitterly. You are. Mommy? Jackson's voice broke through the tension like a bell. He stood at the end of the driveway holding Robert's hand. His face was worried, confused. Kellen immediately shifted into his warm, polished father act. Hey, champ. Mommy and I were just talking. Grown-up stuff. Marissa cut in. It's nothing you need to worry about, she said gently, walking toward her son and kneeling in front of him. I made your favorite cookies. Why don't you go inside with Grandpa and start on your homework? I'll be right there. Jackson looked between his parents, then threw his arms around Marissa's neck. I love you, Mommy, he whispered, just loud enough for Kellen to hear. Then he ran inside. Robert lingered near the porch, a quiet pillar of protection behind his daughter. You can't keep using him as a pawn, Marissa said quietly to Kellen. He deserves better, from both of us. I want to see my son. You've never lost that right, she said. But it has to be his terms now, not yours. No more surprise drop-ins, no more using Jackson to reach me. Something flickered in Kellen's expression, resignation, maybe, or finally understanding that the tactics he'd always used no longer worked. I'll have my lawyer contact yours, Marissa continued, steady. We need a formal custody agreement, one that puts Jackson's well-being first. He opened his mouth to argue, then glanced past her, where their son's silhouette shifted behind the living room curtain. You've changed, he said. No, she replied. I've just remembered who I was before I started changing for you. After he left, Marissa sat in her car for a while, hands resting on the steering wheel. She felt the tension melt off her shoulders like rain sliding down glass. Then she pulled out Dr. Bennett's notebook. Stood my ground again. This time it felt like breathing, like coming home to myself. Her phone lit up, a message from Adam. Remember, storms make trees take deeper roots. She smiled, thinking of her father's roses, of Jackson's laughter, of her own roots growing stronger with each hard truth. Then she walked back inside, sat at the table with her son, and helped him with homework. They ate chocolate chip cookies, not to cover pain, but to celebrate presence, new memories, no masks, no performances, just truth. The family court building rose in front of her, gray and unyielding. But the morning light softened its edges. Marissa adjusted her cream blazer, one she had picked out for herself, not the muted tones Kellen preferred, and glanced at her reflection in the car window. The woman looking back at her was older, stronger. Her gray-green eyes were steady, certain. Ready? Vivian asked, giving her hand a gentle squeeze as they climbed the courthouse steps. Robert had stayed home with Jackson, shielding him from what came next. Inside, their lawyer, Michelle Rodriguez, waited with calm confidence. Just remember what we discussed, she said. Stay focused, stay centered on Jackson. I'll handle anything else. Kellen was already seated when they entered. His suit looked just as pressed as ever, but the air of dominance was gone. He looked off-script, lost. Their eyes met. And for the first time, Marissa didn't feel afraid or angry. She felt pity. Judge Wilson, a stern but fair-faced woman, called the mediation session to order. Kellen's lawyer launched into their case for full custody. But Marissa wasn't listening to his words. She was remembering that morning at the breakfast table. Are you scared, Mommy? Jackson had asked. A little, she'd said honestly, because she'd promised herself to always tell him the truth. But being scared doesn't mean you're not brave, she'd added. Sometimes being brave means doing what's right, even when it's hard. Like when you let me try the big slide even though I was nervous? Exactly like that, baby. Sitting across from Kellen's lawyer, listening to him paint her as unstable and unreliable, Marissa anchored herself in that morning conversation with Jackson, the quiet clarity in his eyes when she'd told him the truth. When it was her turn to speak, she didn't hesitate, and she didn't direct her words to the court. She looked directly at Kellen. "Do you remember what you said the day Jackson was born?" Her voice steady, even. "You held him and promised we'd always put his happiness first." She paused. "That's all I'm asking for now." The room fell silent. Judge Wilson leaned forward, intrigued. "I'm not trying to keep you from our son," Marissa continued. "I'm trying to show him what real love looks like, what respect looks like, what healing looks like." She reached into her folder and pulled out Jackson's latest drawings. 3 homes, 2 smiling parents, 1 child surrounded by color and balance. "A family redefined," she said, "but still full of love. Our son is thriving because he knows he's loved, by both of us. Please, don't let your anger toward me poison that." Kellen stared at the pictures. Something cracked. Not shattered, but softened. "He drew these?" he asked quietly. "Every week," Marissa said. "It's how he processes this. And he's okay, because we can be okay. Not the same, not perfect, but okay." The mediation shifted after that. No longer a battle. It became a conversation centered on Jackson's needs. By afternoon, they had finalized a shared custody agreement, one that emphasized structure, openness, and peace. Outside the courthouse, Kellen caught up to her. "Marissa, wait," she turned, bracing herself. But his expression stopped her. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said quietly. "A real one, not just to check a box." He took a breath. "She helped me understand. I didn't just betray you with Avery. I betrayed you every time I made you smaller, just so I could feel bigger." Marissa felt her eyes sting. But the tears weren't from pain this time. "Thank you for saying that." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he added, "but I want to be a better father, and I want Jackson to see me respect his mother." She nodded, and watched him walk away, not as the man who had broken her, but as someone trying to rebuild himself. Her phone buzzed as she reached the car. "So proud of you, sweetheart. Jackson's asking when his brave mommy is coming home. Remember how far you've come, Adam. Whatever happened today, you're stronger than you think." Marissa sat in the driver's seat, the weight of the day catching up to her. She opened Dr. Bennett's notebook and wrote, "Today I faced my biggest fear. But the real win wasn't the agreement. It was seeing Kellen clearly, not as the man who broke me, but as someone learning, and seeing myself, not as someone to be fixed, but as someone who's already whole." Another buzz. "Tuesday, breakfast." She smiled. "Wouldn't miss it. I have something important to share." And it was important, not just the agreement they'd signed, but the lease she'd finalized yesterday, on a cozy 2-bedroom just a few blocks from Jackson's school. Her first fully independent choice. A space where she and her son could build their version of peace, where she could finally stretch her wings, without hitting someone else's walls. As she turned onto her parents' street, something in her chest felt lighter. Not because life was perfect, but because, finally, it didn't have to be. She was learning that strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about how you put yourself back together afterward. And sometimes, the version you rebuild is stronger than the one you began with. Moving day arrived, clear and bright, the Atlanta sky a crisp, flawless blue that seemed to echo Marissa's mood. She stood in the middle of her new living room, sunlight pouring through bare windows, surrounded by cardboard boxes marked in her own handwriting. Each label was more than a name, it was a choice. A piece of her new life, picked with care. "This one goes in the kitchen, right, Mommy?" Jackson asked, arms wrapped around a box labeled coffee mugs. "Careful, sweetheart," she said, catching it before it slipped. "Why don't you help Grandpa with your toys instead?" Robert was already arranging Jackson's dinosaur figures on newly built shelves, each prehistoric creature finding its spot in their new home. Vivian was in the kitchen, organizing cabinets with the ease and precision of someone who had turned many houses into homes. The doorbell rang. Adam stood outside as promised, with a truck full of furniture they'd picked out together from a nearby vintage shop. Pieces she had chosen, not showroom perfect like Kellen used to prefer, but warm, textured, full of character. "This couch is definitely a 2-person job," he said, smiling. His sleeves were rolled up, his flannel shirt familiar, comfortable. "Maybe 3, he added, nodding toward Robert, who was already halfway out the door with a dolly. I get the feeling your dad doesn't like to sit still. She laughed, remembering their conversation over pancakes that Tuesday morning. She'd mentioned needing help. He'd offered. No pressure. Just presence. Mr. C. Jackson darted toward the door. Want to see my dinosaur kingdom? Absolutely, buddy, after we help your mom with this couch, okay? They moved together through the morning, Robert and Adam lifting and arranging furniture, Vivian setting up shelves, Jackson supervising with great enthusiasm and questionable direction. Marissa stood in the middle of it all, a quiet joy settling in her chest. And yet, under that joy, a sliver of guilt threaded through her. Watching Jackson pull Adam by the hand, beam at him with the same warmth he once saved only for Kellen, she felt the ache of change. Was she rushing too fast into this new version of life? Was it fair to let Adam fit so easily into these corners of their world, even if it felt natural? Even if it felt right? But then Jackson laughed, unburdened, joyful, and she reminded herself, this wasn't replacement. This was rebuilding, and Jackson was adapting, not forgetting. This wasn't the life she planned. But somehow, it was exactly the life she needed. By afternoon, Kellen arrived for his scheduled time with Jackson. He lingered awkwardly at the doorway, taking in the half-unpacked boxes, the mix of old and new furniture, the energy of a place still becoming. Nice place, he said after a beat. It suits you. Thanks. She appreciated that he didn't say better than our old house. No comparisons, no edge, just acknowledgement. Ready for pizza, champ? He asked Jackson, who was busy showing Adam his new dinosaur encyclopedia. Can Mr. C come too? Jackson asked, voice innocent, eyes hopeful. The moment froze, Kellen looking at Adam looking at Marissa, everyone aware of the fragile ecosystem they were now a part of. Not today, buddy, Adam said softly. This is dad time, but maybe another day, okay? Jackson nodded. He hugged Adam, then his grandparents, then his mom. I love you, he said before heading to the car. No tension, no drama, just the rhythm of something new and real taking root. As the afternoon faded into the calm of evening, Marissa stood in her doorway and breathed. Her parents were getting ready to leave too. Vivian hugged her tightly. You've built something beautiful here, sweetheart. And I don't just mean the house, I mean this life. We're just a phone call away, Robert added, though they lived only 15 minutes down the road. Then it was just Marissa and Adam, standing in her half-furnished living room as the setting sun painted the walls in soft shades of amber and rose. I should go too, he said gently. Let you settle in. Stay, she said before she could think to stop herself. Just for a cup of coffee? I think I can find the mugs in one of these boxes. They sat on her new couch, sipping coffee and watching the sky shift colors beyond the window. I've been thinking about what you said, she began. About storms and deeper roots. She paused, searching for the words. I think I finally understand. The storm didn't destroy me. It just showed me how strong my roots already were, and where I needed to grow new ones. Adam nodded, his gaze warm. Katie used to say that healing isn't about going back to who you were. It's about growing into who you're meant to be. Marissa smiled. Is that what we're doing? Growing into who we're meant to be? I think, Adam said carefully, we're both exactly where we need to be right now. Everything else is just potential. She loved that word, potential. It held promise, without pressure, possibility, without demand. Later, alone in her new home, Marissa opened Dr. Bennett's notebook one last time. She wrote, Today I realized something. This journey wasn't about finding a new love story. It was about loving myself enough to finally write my own. She walked room to room, straightening a frame, adjusting a throw pillow. In Jackson's room, his dinosaurs stood sentinel over his dreams. In the kitchen, her red coffee maker gleamed on the counter, bright and bold, just like her. On her bedside table, she placed a small potted rose bush, a housewarming gift from her father. Sometimes, he'd said, you have to be both the gardener and the rose, nurturing yourself, giving yourself permission to bloom. She opened her bedroom window, letting the cool night air drift in. In the distance, a car horn, a barking dog, the hum of a living city. And here, in this space she'd carved out with courage, she was herself. Not just surviving, but blooming. Not just healing, but transforming. Not just existing, but finally, truly living. Dear friend, it's easy to believe that strength means never falling apart. But the truth is, real strength shows itself in the quiet, persistent act of putting the pieces back together, even when your hands still shake. Like Marissa, we all carry the weight of old stories, some we never asked for. But here's what the Stoics remind us. We are not harmed by what happens to us, but by our judgment of it. Life's disruptions don't define you, they refine you. You get to choose which seeds take root in the soil of your survival. And when you choose growth, love, and truth, you don't just rebuild, you rise. You are not behind, you are becoming. If this story touched something in you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Someone out there might need this just as much as you did.